Welcome to Streaming Star Wars. Nick, how you doing, man? How's it going? How are things?
Fantastic. I've got a little dance going on in my chair because we've got this new music that we dropped in today, and it's much more upbeat. It's a little less rock and roll than what we had going before, so it's a great way to start out a Friday night.
Oh, it was funny. We were talking with our guests about before we came on about just annoying YouTube stuff, and I think that music might qualify for annoying YouTube stuff. So,
only time will tell.
Only time will tell. So, first of all, if you're hanging out with us, thank you so much for checking us out on this Friday night. We have fantastic guests to join us in just a little bit. We have the Resistance broadcast hanging out with us, and I'm so excited to be talking to them about Star Wars Celebration, and of course, what else are all Star Wars fans talking about right now? But Obi-Wan Kenobi. But so what's been your Star Wars week looking like this past week, Nick?
I mean, most of my life is revolving around Kenobi at this point. It's two things. It's Kenobi, which makes me happy, which gives me joy, and it's also trying to still get over the post-celebration depression, because I miss Celebration. I miss the time that we all got to spend together hanging out, which of course we're going to talk a bunch more about in a little bit. So my post-celebration depression is being cured by Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah. And it is funny too, because, and we'll talk about this in a couple minutes, but just this, like, there's so much stuff that I see pictures coming up all the time on the feed from Celebration. I'm like, oh, I didn't get to do that. Oh, I didn't see that person. Oh, I meant to do that. So now I'm past the wow, that was amazing, to the almost the whatever post FOMO might look like, fear of what I missed out on. So
exactly.
But it is, we do still continue to move forward with so much Star Wars stuff. We did have some news this week. If you're ready, we could pop in and just get the news done. Well, D23 promises a look at Lucasfilm. Galaxy's Edge may be coming to life on Disney+, and Joby Harold talks about Moses Ingram. Give us 5 minutes, and we'll give you the galaxy. Well, another week, another flood of news, rumors, clickbait, and conversation. This is Pete Fletzer, and welcome to Disturbances in the Force. All the links to the original stories can be found in the notes, and I urge you to check them out. So, let's get to it. Well, D23, the annual Disney Fan Expo, will take place later this year at the Anaheim Convention Center, the same location as Star Wars Celebration a few weeks ago. And the event features experiences, exclusive merch, and inside looks at all things Disney, which, of course, includes the Star Wars franchise. On Saturday, September 10th, D23 will feature a panel that includes both Marvel and Lucasfilm. The official announcement says, quote, filmmakers, celebrity talent, and surprise guests will join representatives from Marvel Studios and Lucasfilm, among others, on stage to showcase theatrical and Disney Plus titles. Going behind the scenes of these studios' highly anticipated films, specials, and series, attendees will also see exclusive footage and be among the first to learn what else is in the works. While there's no specific mention of what will be shown, D23 has in the past been the place where projects such as the Obi-Wan Kenobi series have been announced. D23 takes place September 9th through the 11th this year. Well, YouTube channel Diz Insider, that's real easy for me to say. YouTube channel Diz Insider dropped some rumors this week regarding the upcoming Disney Plus Star Wars series, The Acolyte. Derek Cornell of the site claims that some of the Star Wars Legends characters could be introduced into live action for the first time in the Leslie Headland-helmed show. He claims that Darth Bane, Darth Malak, Darth Revan, and Darth Nihilus could make an appearance in the yet-to-be-shot series. He also claimed that Disneyland and Disney World's Galaxy's Edge location, the planet Batuu, could be making an appearance in some upcoming show as well. He speculated it could be the newly announced Skeleton Crew or the Ahsoka series. There are no official Lucasfilm statements on any of these rumors at this time. The cast of The Mandalorian spoke to Entertainment Tonight this week, and they gave some indication that the third season of the show is going to be expanding the universe, as well as taking perhaps a more dramatic tone. Carl Weathers, who plays Grief Karga and is also directing an episode in season 3, said, quote, has a lot of heft. It's so dense, but full of character and a lot more opportunity for depth. Each of these characters has so much story within their own personal story, and as an audience, you get to see just little glimmers of things that we didn't realize. Katie Sackhoff, aka Bo-Katan, said she's not done, meaning Bo-Katan, refusing the Darksaber. Makes us question and makes her question what's different, why now, and what's important. She's still on that journey, and for the first time we met her, she was very young and impressionable, and she's been continuing to evolve and grow and figure out what she is. You can find the full article on et.com, and The Mandalorian Season 3 will drop in February of 2023. The marketing campaign for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show continued this week with another edition of Obi-Wan Wednesdays. Each week from now through June 29th, StarWars.com will feature new products inspired by the Disney Plus series. This week, they unveiled a Funko Pop of Tala Durith, the Imperial officer turned Jedi trafficker. Hasbro dropped 5 new retro series 3.75-inch action figures designed to capture the style of that original 70s and 80s toys. They include Obi-Wan, the droid Ned B, the Grand Inquisitor, Darth Vader, and the Fifth Brother. LEGO also introduced a new playset that recreates the duel between Vader and Obi-Wan on Mapuzo from Part 3 of the series. It includes minifigs of Kenobi, Vader, Ned B, and Tala. Finally, a plush version of Leia's droid companion Lola is available for pre-order by Mattel. Visit ObiWanWednesdays.com for these items and previous merchandise that is now available. Finally, Obi-Wan Kenobi series writer Joby Harold spoke to The Hollywood Reporter earlier this week, and he shared some insight to Moses Ingram's character, the third sister, also known as Reva. He told THR, quote, "I love that Reva is this mystery box. I try to speak to her as little as possible, and I'm going to keep it that way. But the notion of having a character that we don't know on a legacy show where we do know everything and everybody is part of the fun of the show. So the less said about her, the better, considering there are very few people in places where you don't know what's happening." And Part 5 of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series drops on Wednesday, June 15th on Disney+. Well, that wraps it up for this week's Disturbances in the Force. Make sure to check out the ATG Cast podcast stream for weekly one-on-one interviews with the people behind the fandom. This Thursday, Podcast of the Wills will continue their deep canon dive into the Phantom Menace. Please subscribe for regular updates. Follow us on all your social media channels at ATGcast and visit our website at atgcast.com to keep up with us, find our merch, and get information about supporting the show as an ATG patron. Thank you so much for listening, and may the Force be with you.
Excellent job, sir.
Thank you very much.
The action figures is a little bit of a tongue twister. That gave
it
you
is
a
hard
challenge,
to say 3.75-inch action
That's
figure.
right. You handle it like a pro every time.
So, it does feel like there's nothing but Obi-Wan news every week. Still, even as the show continues, I don't know what's going to happen. We only have 2 weeks left of the show. And but most importantly, we have some great guests with us who probably also have some opinions on the show. So why don't we bring in our friends for this week's show?
Let's do it.
We are so excited to have James, John, and Lacey from the Resistance broadcast with us. James, John, and Lacey, how are you doing?
James looked like he wanted to fight someone in that photo.
I love that.
He was
picture.
committed to that.
It was like John's like me, and then James like
he was committed fully to the strength of the purple lightsaber.
Yeah,
and he's
totally going
out of
for
the
it.
three of us, he's the least likely to fight anybody.
I know, right?
That's my sense. That's my sense. I believe that to be true.
Lacey's first, 100%.
Oh, no.
I mean,
But
probably.
she's mostly just coming after you, John.
It's usually me. Yeah,
It's
right,
usually
right.
John. It's usually
No, it's
John.
yeah, I'm doing well. I still hear some thunder upstairs or bowling, which means my kids aren't to bed just yet. But hanging in there. Thanks for having us. And am I allowed to do this yet?
Absolutely.
Oh, sure. Let's do it. Let's toast to.
This is
Why do you have
certainly
a what is it? Love is blind glass.
No, this is a mega pint.
I know, but Love is
Nice.
Blind has all those gold wine glasses.
I don't know. I don't know.
Like
wanted
the
one with a
rose
stem.
gold version.
I don't know, but here it is.
Well, the good news is John knows the traditions of the show, and one of the things that we always do on Streaming Star Wars is we have a drink. We raise our glass for a toast.
Oh,
So
awesome.
cheers to y'all. Thank you so much for being on. Cheers to everybody in the live chat. We've got a bunch of friends hanging out. Happy Friday to
Cheers.
everybody.
yes.
Yay.
Wow. So since we did say happy Friday, let's start with this question about Kenobi. How do we feel about Wednesdays versus Fridays? I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I don't mind Wednesdays.
I love Wednesdays. Yeah, that is amazing in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know that I have an opinion one way or the other. It's just sometimes I forget what day it is, and I'm just like, oh my god, it's Kenobi's coming out tomorrow, and I only find out because of those damn West Coasters who are like, Kenobi's coming out tonight. I'm like, not for me,
No,
pal.
not where I live.
Yeah.
Not for
it's
anyone
rough.
in this chat right
Correct. Not at
Yeah.
all.
The bigger thing to me, like I like the change to Wednesday. Also, too, it kind of makes sense because we wanted to put out our shows on Thursdays. We don't mind switching to Wednesdays, and there was some kind of like our schedule stuff that works out a lot better for us that it comes out on Wednesdays. But the other thing to me is like I still honestly do not understand why they haven't shifted it to like a prime time release.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
7 in the West Coast, 10 in the East Coast, and make it an event every week that
Mhm.
everybody's watching it at the same time, live tweeting it, like everything.
Yeah,
It just
true.
makes no sense to
It
me
makes
that
no
they're
sense
like,
to me either. Yeah.
you know what would be better? Really late for some people and impossibly late for
The
others.
dead middle of the night for everyone else.
And
Yeah.
so no one's talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Right,
like
yeah.
also like, okay, so maybe some people would have things they need to do on Thursday nights. So they wouldn't get to watch it till they get home and their Twitter feeds will be whatever. But that's nowhere near as ridiculous as the people who get up on Friday morning and have to go to work and they have to avoid social media and everything all day. And they're just
Yeah.
like complete blinders until they can possibly get home because it's just they know that it's impossible to get on and not encounter this stuff. I'm like, I just don't get it, guys. Just do
The spoilers are nuts. I tweeted something this week. I was like, guys, that Kenobi spoilers ... thing you're doing is
Right.
Doesn't
still
work.
showing everybody what you're saying.
That's right. Our
And
phone
people were
screens
like, well,
keep
you
getting
should mute
longer.
it.
It doesn't hide anything.
Right. And I had a bunch of people kind of like come back at me and be like, well, if you mute spoilers, and I'm like, okay, but
Oh,
it's
but that
been
doesn't
like
even
3
work either.
hours.
Yeah.
It's
that
been
doesn't
like
work either.
3 hours. And then they're tagging the official show tag. I'm like, oh, I don't know,
Could you-
guys.
Would it be possible to put like a tweet and then like a dot for a second tweet and a dot for a third tweet and then like start putting your spoilers and Twitter would like hide it in a thread?
Or you could just not say anything for a couple
Well, I
days.
get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
And then
But
you
if
don't have to
somebody sees
concoct.
that initial tweet, they could
If
choose
you really
to go
need to
into
say
the
it, you should
thread.
just text it to somebody that's already
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
it
yeah.
with you.
I got
Well,
you.
and I
I'm just
think for
saying.
me, talking about the timing of it all, I feel like the sweet spot was when we got
Mm-hmm.
Loki and Mando on Wednesdays and Fridays. I loved having 2 things to look forward to, and it
Oh, that
spread the
was
week
nice.
out.
Yeah, I get
And it
it.
didn't
Yeah,
feel
that
like I
was
have
cool.
to wait 7 more days for the next thing. But of course, I think our understanding is they moved it all to Wednesday. With movie theaters opening back up, they want people to go to the movies on Fridays. And so I think that's part of why it happened, because not everybody's going to get up and watch it in the morning like I do. My parents are
Right.
going to watch it on Friday night or whatever. But yeah,
Netflix
those 2
does
times a week. That was
Fridays
great.
too, I think. Netflix releases
Mhm.
stuff on Fridays.
Yeah. I think that
And
was
I think
one of the
this
things that
was
pushed
the
it too.
This is the first week that we've seen a live action Marvel property and a live action Star Wars property drop on the same day.
Right.
Yep.
Which was interesting because
it's an
when I went on, it was Miss Marvel was the headline and
The first
not
one, yeah.
Obi-Wan episode 4. I was like, interesting.
That
It
came
almost
out?
feels-
I don't even realize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it almost feels like an interesting experiment for Disney because of that, for that fact. Because, like, for example, I've been, like a lot of us, keeping up with both series. I just got to like the first 20 minutes of Miss Marvel today, and I couldn't even finish it because I was so focused on Kenobi. It'll be also very interesting once I guess Andor and Bad Batch might overlap based on
Yes.
some of the timing.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be that'll be
And will there
interesting.
not? And there might be. Does that also coincide with She-Hulk? Is it possible there's 3 things that happen I'm not as up on the Marvel schedule, but that's sometime this late
Yeah, I don't
fall.
know.
It
as
also
well, so
that's another thing is like, I understand them dropping new shows on Wednesday can be like the Disney thing, but I don't understand why they also wouldn't on their own system, like come up with like Marvel Monday, Star Wars Tuesday, and just have the shows drop at different times. I guess they want to give them all the perfect spot, and it's more likely that they would not. I don't know. It's confusing to me why they would all drop them at 3 a.m.
But
Wednesday
it doesn't matter.
night, you know,
It doesn't matter what we think. They're like, this is when it comes out, and
Nobody's
you're gonna
listening
watch it.
to us.
Yeah, you're gonna watch it.
Well, and it might be interesting too to see if, and we got the announcement this week for D23 in September, with this much stuff that's going to start coming out more regularly, if they don't make an adjustment to it going forward, you know, maybe with this late slate of winter shows into next, you know, January, February with Mando 3, depending on how it looks right now and what their numbers are. I'm sure they're always tinkering and trying to make it as good as they can.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the episode. Actually, let's talk about where we are with Kenobi. One of the interesting things, and I think I said it last week, is, you know, with Mando and Book of Boba Fett, even though it was one continuous story, it felt like you could take each episode and talk about that episode. But I'm finding, and I'd love to hear from you guys, I'm finding that, like, I look at it as just, I went and I just watched a little bit more of the same movie. And so when I'm even thinking about the show, I'm thinking about it a little bit more as the full story. So how do you guys feel about the show so far? What's your impression? And is it, I guess the best way to start would be, is it meeting your expectations, which is such a horrible question to ask because everybody brings so much expectations, but how is it meeting your expectations as a show?
I'm gonna let John start because he was the one for what, a year and a half now, being like, they better knock this out of the park because it's Obi-Wan
No,
Kenobi.
they have to knock it out of the
They
park.
have to.
Well, they have to.
And let's, you know, nuance is important, right? So I said that because it's the one thing that it seemed that every fan, no matter what type of fan you were like excited about Obi-Wan Kenobi, whether you were original trilogy people or prequel kids, especially, of course, and or newer people who were just like onto the hype train of this iconic character and Ewan McGregor returning. So I was saying, like, in other words, I was saying, like, they can't botch, like, whatever people think about Book of Boba Fett. I enjoy it. I haven't found myself revisiting it. I don't know if that means anything for me, but I was just kind of saying, like, Obi-Wan's got to be, it's got to be a hit. It's got to be good, you know? And I've been enjoying it very, very much. On my rewatches, because I rewatched with my wife and she just got caught up. And so we did a 3-episode binge last night. And to your point, Pete, it did feel cohesive in that way, where it was just like, let's roll it over and start the next part. I keep saying I want to say chapter because of the Evero stuff, but next part. And then I really enjoyed, you know, McGregor's performance has been really good. I like his subtleties in terms of how he's slowly transitioning physically, in the way Alec Guinness moves, the way he speaks slower, more methodical, that sort of thing. I think the writing is one of the bigger strengths of this series. I think the dialogue is very, very good, on point with Star Wars. It has the humor, but it also has the emotion, and they blend it nicely. Stuff that isn't hitting with me yet anyway. We'll see what, you know, we have 2 chapters or parts to go, so it's hard to speak on it now, but the music hasn't registered with me very much so far in this. And I'm surprised, and I'm not saying for the sake of nostalgia, but I'm surprised they haven't woven in more of classic themes, and especially, you know, Battle of the Heroes or Duel of the Fates, which they might, you know, again, we have the third of the way to go. But the music and some of the directing choices or editing choices have been a little head scratchers to me. And I still love Deborah Chow and the work she's doing. And I'm glad that they have one person telling this story versus, you know, this is Robert Rodriguez, and now this is Favreau, and now this is Bryce Dallas Howard. And it feels choppy when they do that. It works for movies, but not TV shows to me. But with this, I think that's why, again, it feels like this nice cadence and nice flow because it's her vision throughout. So mostly good. I'm like been giving these like 8s on our show out of 10. But I'm still yearning for Beru and Luke scenes. So hopefully we get that in the next episode or 2.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to let James go because James is the one that said that he didn't need this show.
I was with James on that, honestly. When I first heard about this show, I was like, okay, we're going to see an old man sit in the desert for 6 weeks. But
yeah, I mean, okay, I'll tell you this. this is the vibe I'm getting from episode 1 through 4. I don't think we needed this show. I don't think there's anything coming out of it that I go like, holy crap, like I can't believe everything's changing now. The show is providing new context for things that we're probably going to think about it differently, but I think that's inherent of literally anything they do. So coming out of this now, I'm like, did we need to see Kenobi and Vader going at it one more time, or was it just fine that he was in the desert for 19 years, after the last time they talked? It almost feels a little bit like there's now more questions of like, well, that seems a little weird now, rather than like, oh my gosh, it's so much better. Like I think people talk about how episodes 2 and episode 3 were what it was, and then that Clone Wars existing in between of them really kind of like fleshed them out and made them better for a lot of fans. I'm not sure that this show is going to do that for the contextual ends of the timeline. It almost feels like now people will be able to say, well, now they did the stuff with Kenobi, and it's like kind of weird, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, the show was fine, but like, some of this stuff doesn't really add up. So I don't know. I'm a little bit like, maybe I was right. Like, maybe we didn't need this.
That's fair. I've loved it so far. I think my favorite episode compared to a lot of people, which is John and I were talking about this the other night on our stream. It's like, we always tend to like the ones that nobody likes. I don't know why. It always just happens that way. I'm someone that's always searching for the fun episode, the episode that's leaving me smiling. I like Star Wars because it makes me happy. And some people like those darker themes or the more depressing stuff, or like, oh, that was so emotional, and like kind of like a rip your heart out way. Like, people love Dave Filoni and he does that all the time. Like, that's his thing. I enjoy kind of the campiness, weirdness, happiness of Star Wars. So like last night's episode, to me, with the exception of the tomb stuff, which was like really creepy, but like the stuff of Obi-Wan becoming himself again and like fighting stormtroopers, like I literally was cheering. I was pumped to see him using a lightsaber and like doing his little spin moves and stuff. Like, that's all I could ask for. And then I go online and I see people being like, that was so stupid, I don't like that. I'm like, Star Wars is literally like someone running around with a laser sword. Like, that is Star Wars. So
what are we really talking about here?
Yeah, I just
it was my favorite episode so far.
Yeah, I get that people want those deeper meanings and like breaking things down into like what it could, what is this in the bigger scheme. I just like to enjoy myself, and I go into things being like, I'm gonna have a good time. I think this series has been great. Is it my favorite thing that they've done TV wise? No, I think Mando still tops that. I think Mando is kind of that top tier that you can't kind of get above yet, because Book of Boba Fett came in and we were like, oh, this is good. And then Mando showed up in Book of Boba Fett and I was like, oh, right, he's back. And like, it had nothing to do with Boba Fett, like it was Mando. So
I wonder if a lot of that has to do with expectations too. Nobody expected anything about Mandalorian. Question. Who's this character?
And then he shows up coming through a grocery thing, like a freezer curtain, and I'm just like, I'm hyped. I'm pumped. As soon as you hear that like notes, I just knew that it was going to be awesome.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really great point, James, because we came into Mandalorian with the lowest expectations of anything we've gotten so far. Pete says, we joke about Pete saying, I didn't know if I wanted, Obi-Wan. Pete has said that about all the shows that have come out so far. I didn't know if I wanted
John and
Mando.
I were calling it Mandaborian before Mandalorian came out. Like,
but my expectations were so low for it that there was no bar. Everything was a jump over the bar. Everything continued to get better. I had expectations for Boba Fett, even though I grew up original trilogy kid and didn't care that much about Boba Fett. I still felt like, oh, it's supposed to be this. It's, Obi-Wan. Of course I did, because of Obi-Wan being Obi-Wan. But Mando came in the most pure, like, let's just see what we get. Everything else has had some baggage attached to it,
and it punched you in the face in the sense of like, this is not what you expected.
And it kept doing it, which is what.
And then Grogu just takes
it
transcended everything. Like, he's a pop culture icon. Like, it's
that's why, like, when I'm looking at the future too, like if we're taking Mandalorian as like unexpectations. It did really well, but then both Boba Fett and Obi-Wan having expectations, fans are kind of iffy about it. You look to the future, I think Ahsoka is going to have problems because people are going to be like, it didn't live up to my live action Ahsoka. Like what we thought Rebels and all that was going to be. That could have problems. But then you're probably going to get sleeper shows like The Acolyte, and people will be like, I don't know what this is, but it's awesome and I love it and I love the lore.
I think Andor is going to be nuts.
I think Andor is going to be nuts, even though we have Rogue One expectations. I think the vibe with it is like, who the heck is Andor? I don't even remember this guy. Like, I really think people don't have the connection with that character, and they'll be surprised how good the show is because they're going into it with low expectations.
And I think too, with something like Andor, we know how the story ends. So you get to fill in that much more before. You don't have to come in with the expectation of, well, what else are they going to do with them going forward? There's a finality point for that character. So anything that comes before that is just extra stuff we get, and we don't necessarily have to put expectations on it.
But I think
on the other side of that equation, you have Obi-Wan, which has that finite ending.
True.
And I think that's causing more issues than the one that obviously Andor being like, he's dead. You know,
and I agree with you on that, Lacey, because I think a lot of people are also let's face it, and we're not going to spend more than a couple seconds talking about this, but there are people who went into this show wanting to hate it, wanting to use this as a reason to blame Disney for doing whatever they think Disney's doing, blah blah blah, right? So by taking a core character like Obi-Wan, who not even if he didn't have 24, what was it, 7 seasons of Clone Wars, and that amazing episode of Rebels, he's a core character. He's one of the Star Wars icons. You are setting yourself up immediately to have people start punching holes in it. And granted, the holes that have been punched so far have been absolutely baseless and looking for clicks. But at the end of the day, it's just such a hard one to meet those expectations. That said, the moment that you mentioned, Lacey, was, I think, as I rewatched part 4 today again, and when he is in the hallway and he does a little lightsaber twirl for the first time in the series, I was like, that's it. That's what I wanted. Okay, cool. Yeah. And it's funny with this episode, because when Nick can attest to this, that morning, because we all text each other, we got this little group of us, and I was like, that was okay. And then I watched it again and I was like, wait a minute, no, I think that was the best episode because it had everything. And
I agree.
Let's talk for a second about little Leia. This little girl has captured everything about that character. I was going to say Carrie Fisher, but that's not really fair because it's impossible to capture Carrie Fisher. But the essence of that character, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you feel like she's building up what Leia really was, maybe sort of giving some insight to some of her Force sensitivity and things like that. How is this character striking you all?
So the first episode, I'm going to admit, I had my issues because I felt she ran really slow. And I didn't understand why she was running so slow, because there were adults running after her, and it was like this weird, like, I don't know, very slow-mo run. And it's like one of those weird things that like really bothered me. It was just like really like, oh, I got you. No, I don't. And I'm like, he would have caught her like 6 times already. She's a little kid. But besides that, I think my favorite part from the beginning to now has been those moments that you get kind of her Force intuition. Like episode 1, when she's reading her cousin's mind, I strongly believe this. I know people have argued that it's not. I 100% believe that she's like, you think this, you believe this. And it's the same thing that Rey did to Kylo in The Force Awakens. She's feeling it, 100%. She's sensing it, and she doesn't even know she's doing it.
And she turns around and does it to Obi-Wan on Daiyu, the same thing when they're in that alley.
Right. And again, she doesn't realize it's the Force, because we learn that she asks him what it is. I think it's just she's always had it. So it's a feeling that she just knows.
Like Rey.
Right. And I think I love that. I love the little kind of facial stuff she's doing that's like Carrie Fisher, and obviously the outfits that everybody's talking about where they reflect Carrie in the original trilogy. I thought she did a really amazing job. I am surprised, though, that she's in this series so much.
Yeah.
Because I kind of figured she'd be in it, and then he'd get her, he'd save her, and she'd be gone. And she's been in it the whole time. And I'm like, okay, I'm not mad at it, but like I'm very surprised that they've kept her this whole time.
Yeah. And
especially since they didn't promote her.
Right.
Right.
Like she was a surprise for that first episode, and we're like, oh, what a treat. And then it's like, no, she's like a main character in this show as much
Yeah.
as
There's been no
Reva
Luke
or
yet.
Obi-Wan. Yeah.
Minimal Owen and Beru, and I think it kind of flipped everybody because in the promo it was heavy Owen, and they showed Luke in the trailer and stuff, and then they turned it on us. I think she's been a tremendous actor, especially for a kid who was 8 years old at the time doing this. I think they're towing the line perfectly in terms of she's still a little kid, so she's going to have her fears and worries and stuff, but also has the inherent nature of Leia's like, don't take any BS attitude. Because that stuff's ingrained in people and who you are. So you can learn to become certain ways and your life experiences can shift you and shape you. But like Leia's core personality was always there from the get-go. And then you sprinkle in the child element of it so that if she got strapped to that torture thing and she's in that dark room with these troopers and she's like, I'm going to get out of here, so don't you worry about that. I'd be like, get out of here with that. Right. So the fact that they had her screaming for help and stuff, I'm like, all right, so they're balancing it nicely. This kid's never left her home world, and now she's imprisoned. She's being interrogated. She just got told that Obi-Wan died and burned alive. She's going to be scared, and they understood that, and they didn't well. They didn't just make it some sort of a New Hope version of Leia shrunk down. So they did it smart. Again, like I said, I really feel like the writing in the show has been its number one strength, and they did a really good job writing Leia so far. Though I do agree, I am surprised she's in it this much because the whole like her speech to Obi-Wan in A New Hope does feel like she's addressing him for the first time. General Kenobi, years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars. They'll make it work, I'm sure. Pablo is the advisor, lore advisor. I'm sure he's got it all figured out. But I to answer that question, I think she's been tremendous. And Pete, to your point, like it's my favorite episode so far because it does give us the prequel stuff, like the twirls and how he killed the Acklay and stuff. But it also has like 8 callbacks to A New Hope. So this chapter has been the ultimate bridge between prequel and original trilogy right in front of our face. Yeah. Like he's doing Alec Guinness sneaking around the Death Star stuff, doing the noise to distract the noise, and then flipping his lightsaber around, and we're getting the marriage between both those trilogies right there. And that's why I love this episode. So I don't care about the T-47s looking a little hokey, whatever. they were transparent.
They were T-47s
for 17 years. You could see through the cockpit. No one cared.
You could see through the cockpit.
Yeah. So I loved this episode. So when I watched it, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna do my reaction. Did that? I go online. People are like, man, this one was the worst. I'm like, I don't get anybody. I'm always the one, I'm always the one liking the things people like least.
Like Book of Boba Fett, we both loved the Rancor episode.
I love that Rancor episode, that whole nutty finale. Yeah, so
I loved it.
I thought this was just a tremendous marriage between the two trilogies, and they did it so well.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Rancor episode because I think that's helped me with the Kenobi series because I went in just like I did with Last Jedi. In my head, I knew what was going to happen in the last episode. I had written it in my head. He's going to do this, and Kira's going to show up, or whatever, and this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And of course, none of it happened. So I watched that episode, and I was like, oh, I mean, it was good. And then I watched it with my son, and realized that that's the way you always have to watch Star Wars. Because when it was over, he literally was like, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I was like those were his actual words. And I was like, he's right. I mean, it had everything. And that's what this series has had. And yeah, pick it apart all you want, but there's what's the joy in that too? And that's the thing. It's not liking it because it says Star Wars. I love James, your perspective on it is, yeah, did we need it? Maybe not, but is it fun? Sure, and just take it in for that, and enjoy some Star Wars. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Do you go ahead, Nick?
I was just going to say the only thing I wanted to tag on what John said about the writing, and as we were talking about Leia, as a dad with 4 daughters, and as a dad and at that stage in my life with kids, like those moments have hit me hard all the way through. When they're on the truck in the last episode, and she asks, "Are you my father?" and he's holding her hand. Of course, that got misread by everybody. But then like the kid being alone, like the thought of my kid being trapped and captured somewhere alone, like in that scared situation, feeling helpless, like, again, it's hitting me in my feels, and it hits me differently than Star Wars would have 20 years ago when I was, 22 years old, because I didn't have kids then. It was a different thing. And so I've always said one of the things I love about having Star Wars literally my entire life is Star Wars grows and evolves the same way I do. I look at it differently. I view it differently through the eyes of being a parent than I would have before I was a parent. And so those moments have been some of my favorite throughout this series to this point is her interactions with Obi.
Like retrospectively going back and watching some stuff now that I am a dad hits a little differently.
Oh,
I remember how I watched it the first time, but then I also watched it with the new lens and it's pretty cool. Yeah. But dude, Nick, when
then you realize as a mom, everybody dies. And then you're like, great, Star Wars is wonderful.
When Shmi says goodbye to Anakin in Phantom Menace, it kills me every time.
I haven't watched it
and
yet.
it never did before, but it kills me every time now.
For me, the Han and Kylo Ren scene, like in Rise of Skywalker, man, just
being a mom is tough.
So good.
But when Leia grabs Obi-Wan's hand at the end of this episode, like just letting him know like everything's all right, I was like, oh my god, jeez.
Yeah.
I do have to comment though. I found it very interesting that people didn't get the "I wish I was" line.
Yeah,
I thought that was very straightforward to me. That he's saying, "This situation sucks. I wish I was your dad."
Yeah.
Because then you wouldn't be put in this situation and your dad wouldn't be this terrible monster. Like, I'm pretty sure that's what it means. And I feel like people ran with it and they were like, oh, that means he wants to be with Padme. Absolutely not.
It's not what it meant.
I think some people knew damn well, but did it on purpose to stoke flames. I mean, so for the sake of
on the internet,
trolling,
people do that.
It just took this like really like beautiful, emotional kind of heartfelt moment of someone saying, hey, I want to be there for you. And this is from a guy that didn't want to help anybody the episode prior, by the way. This is the guy that let people die. And he's saying to her, I wish I was your father. For people to then take that and be like, oh, it's clear that he wanted to steal this other guy's girl. And I'm like, no, that's not at all.
It's clear you're not paying attention is what it's clear.
And this is why the writing is so good because of what you just said, Lacey. And if you look at these chapters or these parts, it's following all the right beats for his story. We set up in that first one that he wasn't even willing to save a fellow Jedi. And now
he let him die. Yeah.
Yeah. He literally let him die. And now he's doing everything. I mean, we got
holding hands. He went from, no, I'm not helping anybody. I'll hold your hand.
Right.
Sure.
And I love the Finn vibes of when he pops out of the back to tank and he's like, where's Leia? I was like,
yes.
Where's Rey?
And yeah.
Well, also, I think a part of that is at the beginning, there was reluctance because he didn't believe in himself.
Right.
And
absolutely,
as we're seeing him start to believe in himself more and his abilities, like that back to tank scene, like the back and forth between him and Vader was awesome. But seeing him clench a fist and then we see Anakin with no limb, it's showing they're going in two opposite directions. Even though they're in the same like physical type of environment right now, he's starting to believe in himself again. And as he's doing that, he feels like he can help her. Because I think when you go through a trauma of failing, like you did with Anakin, he's probably thinking like, I'm going to screw this up again. I cannot get involved here. So now that he's starting to get that confidence back and stuff, he's like, I can help her and I'm going to do everything I can. I'll die before anything happens to this kid. So I think a lot of that is his own self-awareness, self-assurance, and that old Obi-Wan confidence coming back that's getting him back in the game. Because it's not like in the first chapter, he wasn't like, I don't care about her. Of course he does. But he just feels like he's probably going to mess it up if he gets involved because he didn't believe in himself anymore.
Yeah.
John said something very interesting the other night about Obi-Wan, which I didn't even consider, honestly, which was in the original trilogy, he's moved on from Vader and Anakin in the sense of like, you have to defeat him. He's gone. There's nothing else to save there. Move on. Whereas when we see him in this show, it's very much, he feels regret. He feels remorse. He can't believe he's still alive, all those things. So we have to see that progression from then to the end of this series into A New Hope of him moving on from it and being like, I'm now over this and you're not worth my time of like saving, I don't feel bad anymore.
Himself, yeah.
But with some piece of telling him of Obi-Wan telling Anakin that he can be saved, and then he gives up because Vader says in Return of the Jedi, Obi-Wan once thought as you did,
right?
And so and think of that. I mean, if this is why Obi-Wan is such a wonderfully sad character, because he obviously at some point now
he got it worse than anybody else. If you think about it,
I mean, how many people have died in his arms from Satine to Maul to his master. I mean, it's been rough, and that's why I feel like there's such a disingenuous perspective on social media about why are they breaking down this character, because he's already broken down. What we're seeing actually is him being built back up, which is incredible to watch, and
Right.
that's a true hero's journey. It's a really great story.
Yeah, it makes you understand why she said it's a lot like Logan, and a lot of people
Yep.
were nervous about that. I was a little bit, but I knew they would go the dark way. But they said, like, we know where this ends, and he becomes the self-assured Alec Guinness. I am the Jedi Master. So,
And I think we saw that first turn in this episode. I mean, we saw a little bit of it when he went to save Leia, but this episode where he, pushes the water, twirls the lightsaber, he realizes that tomb, which I have thoughts on that. I don't think they're dead, but that's just me. That the people are in.
Mosquito outside of it.
We were talking about it. We were talking about it the other day. It's just so weird to me. Like, why would they collect dead bodies? And someone was like, "Oh, well, maybe Vader likes to collect people. Like, it's like his,
trophies."
Guardians of the Galaxy collection." I'm like, I don't know, because in Mandalorian we see them doing the whole experiments things with midichlorians, and they're trying to get Grogu.
Remember in Rebels with Luminara and Dooley, what they kept her body to draw Kanan. So so I'm with you. They're either dead or in this really horrible state where they're still vibing some force to get people to
because they're in a secure area too. It's not like they're like in a hangar being like, look at our collection, look what we've done. It's like behind closed doors
in the lobby of Fortress Inquisitorial. It's like, hey, welcome, and look at all these dead bodies.
We have some new bodies. We added them yesterday.
You'll notice an addition to the collection.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, so like we've seen this turn already where he's starting to become that person of like, and I think John said it perfectly. It's like the fist moment is kind of like that click of, now I need to step up.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about the future of the show. It's impossible to tell, but let's talk for just a quick second about, we haven't even really said her name, but Reva as a character. What is, I'm not going to ask your opinion. I have said that I feel like she's what Maul should have been in the Phantom Menace. She's just ruthless and brutal and driven, and who knows why, which is what I'm going to ask you. And I'll start with you, James. What is Reva's story? Are we going to get a revelation, and what's
a revelation?
A revelation.
Oh my God.
We all thought it. Every one of us here thought it.
If anybody was going to say it, though, it should have been John with the dad joke.
Don't underestimate my power of dad jokes, though. I don't know. I feel like we've kind of talked about this on like our own like TRB live after show kind of thing. And I'm almost afraid to like say what we think is going, because I feel like it's starting to come together and like the theories are starting to make sense. But I like the character a lot. I feel like I've been particularly drawn to her, and I don't know exactly why. Because some of the stuff just kind of doesn't make sense. Like, I don't necessarily understand how she knows that Anakin is Vader. Like, almost nobody knows that.
I think that's the big question. That? Yeah, everyone.
Yeah, and then it's like, and then also like, I get that she's trying to impress Vader, but like, aren't all the Inquisitors trying to impress Vader? So why is Kenobi so important to her? Like, and I understand those things. My fear is that a lot of those questions won't get answered. Actually,
oh no,
because I sometimes think like shows sets up certain things. Like, even, I know Mandalorian's still going on, but like there's a lot of questions from season 1 that we still don't really fully understand. There's stuff in Bad Batch where they'd like go to these cloning facilities and stuff, and there's like all these creatures and tubes and things, and then it's like, that, they were up to messed up stuff, they just don't ever talk about it. And it's like, you think it's going one direction, and some of this stuff is just like, I think it might get glossed over as like, yeah, she wanted to impress Vader, and we all know that she used to be, she had force powers when she was young, and she got brought into this, instead of like really giving us the answer, like, was she a Padawan, or was she just like someone the Inquisitorius is fine? Because we know in Rebels they're going around collecting kids as well. Right. So it's like, maybe she was one of the first ones to get brought in that wasn't part of the Jedi establishment. I don't know. They just might not ever answer those questions in the show. So I hope to get some things right. That there's also the stuff about season 2 as well. And it just makes me wonder, like, was she gonna die in the show, and now they're gonna change that to keep her around, and they're gonna be like trying to write new interesting stuff for her next season, and that will mean that they're leaving some of that stuff out of this season. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Who knows if they're gonna do a season?
Well, that's a rumor, right?
Yeah.
It is, but I'm saying it's a rumor that also it seems like the cast has been like, man, if we could do more Kenobi, that would be awesome.
Wink,
It's
wink.
What are you talking about? We know it's a limited series. It's been confirmed. You're only doing this. It's one and done. And the cast is still like, if we come back, you know,
Can I
it's
say
like,
though,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I also don't like going. I think back to like original trilogy and when people like met the Emperor at first, where people like, I need to know where he went to high school. Like,
Right.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm with you, James, in terms of like there is mystery around her, and Joby Harold like deflected questions about it. And he's like, maybe you'll find out one day. But I don't know if I need to know. Like, if I'm introduced to a character when they're 25 and we go forward, I'm like, this is just who they are. Sometimes I'm like, all right, cool. Like, you're a supporting character. I don't need, the series about you entirely or something. Like, you're serving your role well. You're a great character. You're interesting. You're a new character in a show with a lot of characters that we know their fate. So with a character like her or Tala, it adds that what's going to happen with them. Are they going to survive? Are they going to turn good? You need that in these shows, that all these characters that we know their endpoint: Beru, Owen, Obi-Wan, Vader, Luke, Leia. So at least with those other characters that they're working in nicely, it adds that anxiousness of like, is Tala going to get caught? Is she really working for them? Is she going to turn to the good side, Reva? Like, I like that mystery element. So I've really enjoyed Moses Ingram. I think ever since I saw that trailer, she screams, "You can't escape him, Obi-Wan." I was like, sold.
Yep.
Sold.
Ever since I saw her on Instagram twirling a lightsaber, I was sold.
Yeah. The angle there for me, because I'm totally with you on we don't need to know everybody's backstory, is I feel like I would be cool with everybody in this series not really getting explored except for two characters, and that's Reva and Obi-Wan, because I feel like those two characters are the main characters of this show.
Yeah.
Even though Hayden's in the spotlight and he's there and he's coming back, I think all of that's just like how to market the show. I really think that this show is about Obi-Wan and the person chasing Obi-Wan, and understanding that villain is just like any James Bond movie or something like that. You want to see James Bond. Obviously, you want to get his story and his perspective, but you also want to get the villain's perspective as well. It's like the antagonist kind of thing. So I feel like she's important to get the backstory. It's not so much just like how you're saying, like treating every Star Wars character could just kind of be glossed over, and that's fine. It doesn't have to have a huge story. I feel like she kind of does.
Like, I want to know how Babu Frick became an electrician,
Exactly.
How many years of school did he?
Did he go to trade
Yeah.
school? Did he learn it from his dad? What's the deal?
He's
here?
81, so there's quite a story there.
That's
And
right.
I
There's a
stand
lot of
by
years.
that. I'd love to hear more from Babu Frick. But on the Reva front, I strongly believe that the reason we got that, really traumatic child scene at the beginning of the series is because she's one of those children.
Yeah.
I think
I
that
do
was
too.
very
Lacey
blatantly
said it.
obvious. And I think that, after watching this episode and kind of the clues they've left along the way, I think she got taken from the temple and she had to do really terrible things to get where she is. And she knows that. I think in that tomb hallway, when they show the little Padawan, I was like, could that have been her best friend? That they were like, it's one or the other. Who's gonna do, like terrible things that you have to remember that Anakin slaughtered a room full of kids.
Yeah.
So they're not against killing kids in Star Wars.
No, not at
Right.
all.
And I think that they make it pretty clear in this series that to become an Inquisitor, you have to do really bad things, and bad things happen to you to get to that point, whether it be torture or whatever. So I think that's where her character came from. And I know that there's been discussion about this, and I kind of thought it too while watching this past episode, is like, there seems to be this anger she has, not just with herself and the Jedi, but specifically with Kenobi. And I know that as part of it is obviously she wants to get that promotion and get paid and get up there in the scale of things. But I think there's also this personal thing where she, as a child, if what I believe is true, which is she's one of those children from the temple, she was left behind. She was left behind and picked up by the bad guys, and she had to do what she had to do to survive, just like Akira or any other child that then goes on to do terrible things to survive in the Star Wars universe. And then to see Kenobi be going after Leia so aggressively to save her, it kind of, I would not lie. If I was in Reva's position, I'd be like, well, why did no one come back for me?
Right. Well,
Why did no one come save me?
And if she saw the video, or the hologram that he sent out telling all the Jedi to stay away from the temple,
And she's hiding in there.
right,
It's like,
he
I'm
gave the
on my
signal.
own.
Yeah,
Right.
he gave the signal to
She was
to
abandoned.
abandon.
That's
Oh,
exactly
yeah,
it.
true. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and I agree with Lacey completely. And I think even that first night after we went to the premiere, which we're about to transition to, because holy crap, we all got to go to the world premiere. of
These
this
guys
at
went.
Celebration.
I didn't go, but these guys did go.
Oh, so sad.
I gave my ticket to someone, so it was actually a
Okay,
good
well,
thing.
that
All
was,
right, so it was
that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But anyhow, like you said, I agree with you completely. I think because the literal first person that we see on screen in this show when it opens, that panning shot of Coruscant and the younglings out on that terrace, the first shot we see is the young Black Jedi. And I think that was her. That's the literal first person
by
that
the
shows
way,
up in this entire
shocked me.
series.
I watched it at
And
6 a.m. the following day, and I was
Yeah.
like, with everything going on in the world, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
they're starting with this.
Yeah.
Oh god,
And
there was a
I-
moment.
I
It was a
mentioned it
legit
last.
moment.
I mentioned it last week. If from a pure sort of film school storytelling, it says 10 years later, and then they go to the Inquisitors. They don't go 10 years later and they go to Obi-Wan. So
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
kind of making that connection.
They're tying
And-
it together with those threads, and like the way she's treated by, the way she was treated by the Grand Inquisitor, the way the third brother treats her, they're treating her as less than. They're,
Little
she's been
kid.
pushed
Mhm.
down, which is driving her rage. On top of exactly what I like what you said, she feels abandoned by the Jedi. She's caught in
Which-
between. These people rescued her, but these people abandoned her. But the people that rescued her are pretty shitty to her, so it doesn't
It's
give her a way to go other than
Yeah.
for herself.
like a little reminiscent to how Anakin kept getting put in check too in the prequels, and
Yes.
that enraged him.
Mhm.
And now you have her sort of like kissing Vader's rear end about like Obi-Wan's all that matters. He's like, yeah,
Right.
yeah, you're right. You're
Yeah,
so
cool, let's
right. I couldn't agree more. Like,
The only thing that I have a little bit of hang up on that is it feels like anytime we've ever gotten an origin story of the Inquisitors, like when they were Jedi, they always very clearly had issues with the Jedi and were angry about how things were going down, which aligns kind of with Anakin. Like Anakin very clearly didn't like the way things were going, and when he had the opportunity to join the other side, he's like, yes, I want to go that direction.
Right.
So it seems like most of the Inquisitors, when they were in that room or had, like Order 66 is happening, it seems to me like all of them were like, no, I want to do that. I want to go with you.
I
And
feel
they're
like
very excited.
They were
about
very
it.
reluctantly going. Anakin did not want to go to the dark side. He reluctantly went to save Padme. He was very pained to go to the dark side. I think Reva was very pained to go to the dark side. Maybe like fifth brother who seems to really enjoy this stuff. Like
He's a little
that.
too into it.
But like there are a couple of them that like I think Reva reluctantly joined because she had no other choice to make. Like I really think her and Kira are very close in parallels of like
trafficked.
doing what she
Mhm.
had to do to survive. Yes.
yeah.
Great. Cool.
Yeah. I'm like,
On
we'll
the
see.
celebration.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, so let's transition from just a horrible childhood to Star Wars Celebration.
right.
Which I'm sad you weren't there, Lacey, but it sounds like you did a good thing for somebody by giving them a ticket, which is awesome.
Mhm.
But Star Wars Celebration, I know that you guys had been at Chicago. For me, it was my first celebration. I know Nick was one day in Orlando.
One day in Orlando.
But so let's just dig into Star Wars Celebration a little bit, because I think especially and interestingly, it's been a weird week in social media with some of the trolls trying to get their voice heard, but it's interesting to see so much positivity. And what I'll never forget, Lacey, when you were on my show, like I think it was my sixth episode ever. You were talking about how it's just such this feeling of everybody just loves the same thing, and it's just such a positive experience. How does this one compare to Chicago for you guys?
Go ahead, John.
Well, you go.
I think he was
You're the
asking you.
celebration
Oh.
queen.
Oh, okay. So I've been to 2015, 2016, 2017, 2019, and then this one. I think they were all different in their own way. I think 2015 to me, that main panel, which was the Force Awakens panel, will never compare to any other panel. And I'm not doing that to make people feel bad. It's just one of those things that like Star Wars was back.
Yeah.
And everyone in that room was hyped. And I don't know if people noticed with this past celebration, there were a lot of empty chairs in those big panels.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Force Awakens panel, every single chair was filled in that room. It was packed. But this one, compared to previous ones, I think was different because the first one that we went to together was 2019. We had been podcasting for about a year together. It was before Make Solo 2 happened. It was kind of just us finding our way as a podcast that had only been doing it for about a year while also doing Celebration, which they had never been, but I had. Oh yeah, that's this year. Yay. This year we had obviously our community that you see there. We did our live podcast event, which we streamed on Patreon at a offsite event, which was a lot of work in itself because we did staging and chairs and all this other stuff, which shout out to Radiant Beer Co. They did an awesome job for us. And Ben from Ampersand Productions, I believe. He was just fabulous with our sound and tech stuff. Then we did the Make Solo 2 Happen meetup, which I wish was longer. I was like running from thing to thing. I think from previous years, we were just so booked. And I felt terrible about it because we were so crazy busy that there were multiple times, like you had talked about FOMO before, Pete, and like missing people and missing. I feel I missed so much stuff. And we were literally running from thing to thing. We never had a moment where we were like, what should we do right now? Like we immediately had to be to the next thing. So my own advice for myself for 2023, which we're planning to go in London, is to obviously pick things that you want to do, but like do less. Just take times to take time to be. That was Star Wars Nights. That was really fun. But I'll let these guys chime in. It was just crazy, and it went by way too fast.
Yeah, it did go fast.
James, you're muted. Just the way I like them, folks.
To very quickly piggyback off what she was saying there is like, I think another really good thing you can do if possible was we showed up Tuesday and we did things, collected ideas, processed it all, and even went out and kind of was involved with, other people and met other people and things like on Wednesday as well. There was kind of an extra amount of time that we were also kind of celebrating our podcast and our friendship and, being together and other things like that. So it was, there you go, right there.
Oh yeah. So James, tell the story behind that.
But no,
it does.
That's the picture tells the story itself. It was good because I felt like one thing that Celebration could benefit from, and it'll never happen, is like I wish Celebration was like over a week or something, and you could just spend more time. So it's good that we kind of had the buffer days to help kind of spread out all of that fellowship. But that picture, to be clear, so I've been to Galaxy's Edge before, and they hadn't.
Oh yeah, this was the first. Oh my gosh, I didn't even mention that. This was the first time we've ever gone to Galaxy's Edge.
Oh, it's so amazing.
So I had been
fabulous.
Two times before, actually. I was lucky enough to go twice before, and it was their first time going. So I was like filming reactions and kind of like leading them in the right direction, not spoiling anything, but like telling them like, you want to be in that seat, or whatever, that kind of stuff. Right. But they were trying blue milk for the first time, and I was like, well, I've had it, and they have a new one called Toydarian Swirl or something, and I was like, oh, I'll do that one. Let's see what's up. It's awful. It's so I said a 1 out of 10, and Lacey and John were both like, you're being generous. It's undrinkable. It's very
Oh,
bad.
Thanks, Kenneth.
So yeah, that was my first sip of it, and I was like, I gotta be honest with you, this is rough. Yeah, it was not good.
But then Lacey was filming it, and I like got into like Tom Green mode, and I kept taking sips of it and going like,
No, James was filming.
oh, James was,
And then
filming it.
I took a sip and almost vomited, literally.
Oof.
And then John was just like, "Let me try him."
Yeah, I don't
So
understand
gross.
what it is. I was
I say, if you could give me a flavor profile, what are we talking about here?
It's very
Vomit.
spicy. Like,
so it is mango, but I like mango. The thing
Yeah.
was that I think that throws it off is there's something on the top that is like a spicy thing, and I don't mind spice either,
Spicy
but like
and salty.
spicy, salty, like fruit.
Sounds great for
I don't know.
nachos.
It just doesn't. It was not working.
right.
It was disgusting. And like it was a mango taste too, and I'm not a big fan of mango. So it was like two things I hate, spicy and mango. And
I
then
only kept
salt.
drinking
I
it
love
because
mango.
I kept thinking maybe like maybe the top I don't like, but like
drinking
under.
it.
Maybe
I'm
there's
like,
good stuff
"Oh,
underneath.
I just can't do it. It's so
Yeah.
awful.
He looked at us
I
so
threw it
sad and he
away,
goes, I think I'm gonna throw this out.
Yeah, I think I got like 4 sips tops, and we threw it out. Yeah.
But the
$12
Ronto
well
wrap,
spent.
amazing. The morning one's the best one.
The breakfast one's very good.
And the cold brew coffee with the Cocoa Puffs on top was
I saw a bunch of people put pictures of that up.
Yeah,
it
it
was
good.
so good.
I think one of my best things of Celebration was the Star Wars night after everybody had kind of like walked around. Yeah, this is it. After everybody had kind of walked around and rode the rides and did their thing, and everybody was like, I just kind of want to hang out and chill. Even every time that I go to Disney, my wife and I, or, you know, any situation I've ever been in, it feels like I want to try to get as much stuff done as I can. Why would I sit down and relax and just
He did that on
enjoy
Wednesday,
the
to be
moment?
clear.
Yeah,
He did that on Wednesday.
I knew
he
that
stayed at the park till it closed. We left at like 5.
17 hours in
wanted
the
to
park,
do stuff
literally. He spent.
on Friday. That was a different experience. So I made sure, because it was my first trip to Disneyland, that my Wednesday was 7 a.m. to midnight.
He did it.
And I closed the park down, and I absolutely. But my favorite part was being in Galaxy's Edge and just not doing anything, having no plans, like just sipping, talking, hanging out next to the Falcon in the lighting, and just having a good, relaxing time. It was very peaceful and very moving, like in a Zen way.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that experience made me happy, you know?
I still love walking through Galaxy's Edge and hearing a fighter fly over, and you look up like you're gonna see it, like you literally believe it's there. And it's
no joke. I saw the first time I was there, I saw the moon. I saw the moon and thought, how did they recreate the Death Star?
Oh, get out of here. No, you didn't.
No, I can't. It was like
That's
a split
outstanding.
second thought, but I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, it's like the Death Star in Return of the Jedi, because they look up at it in the sky. And then I'm like, no, that's just the moon, James. Like, what is
Holy
happening?
moly.
Not
And
at
this guy
night,
doesn't
in
drink.
the day. In the day, when you can kind of see it a little bit. Oh, man. But
Love that.
I mean, Celebration for me, I like this one a lot better than Chicago. One, the weather was unbelievable.
Right.
72 and sunny, like pretty much the
perfect.
entire time.
And
so that was
dry,
tremendous.
not humid, dry.
Yeah.
Say it's a far cry from Alabama this time of year.
Or
Yeah.
Connecticut.
Oh, yeah? Is it rainy a lot?
It's
Yeah.
humid, 120%
humid. You're like
humidity
in a
all the
Oh,
time.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Chicago, it was like snowing and it was April. It was kind of rough. But in terms of like my favorite stuff, like being able to see John Williams and Harrison Ford and that whole thing like blew me away. It brought me to tears a little bit, just because knowing that this is never going to happen again. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So
Right.
and like I never thought in a million years I'd ever see John Williams conducting Star Wars and
Same.
Indiana Jones music. So that was really cool. And then
When he did that, I knew John was somewhere crying. As soon as
Oh,
It
I
he started
bawled like a
playing,
baby.
as soon as he started playing indie, I was like, "Where's John in this room right now?"
And the coolest thing was like he had to be helped to his platform, but then once it was go time, he was right back in the pocket,
Yeah.
and just like nothing hurt him. He was moving fast, and it was very cool. But I think my favorite thing is just seeing people and being able to chat with people. Like Nick, I didn't get a chance to meet you, but we bumped into Pete for a few minutes.
Yeah.
But and that's
in the
what
lobby when we were going somewhere else. That's
Right,
what I'm saying.
yeah.
It's like
And I was across
many-
the bar talking to someone else, and I
Oh, were
saw
you?
Pete going to talk to you, and I was like, "They're over there. I want to," but I was I was like, "I can't just leave." And
Right.
and that was the whole trip. The whole
And
trip
I wanna
was
be
seeing
clear,
other people
Yes.
while I was
we
talking to
were
people.
Yeah, and we were constantly being like, "Hey, what's up? We have to go. I'm so sorry."
Yep.
And I want to be clear. We were genuinely going somewhere. It wasn't us being like, "We don't want to talk to you, bye," because comments were made, and I swear we weren't doing that.
Well,
Like, I
it's-
would never
yeah.
just blow people off. It was always
Right.
a genuine like, "Oh God, we have to go. Oh my God, we have a reservation.
So,
oh my God, we have to do this
There
thing."
was they were seeing a
Yeah.
lot of people that we know of who are also podcasters or whatever,
Mhm,
and I
mhm.
knew like the 2 minutes I'm talking to this person is probably the last time I'm going to see them this week, and it's just how it is. And so I saw we saw Pete, we saw Andy and Josh, and we saw Jerry at the bar, and I saw Scotty at Galaxy's
Disney.
Edge, and
Yeah.
so so you're a group of guys, but I talked to everyone for like 2 minutes max the whole
Yep.
week, and then it's other people you see and other friends and stuff, and you spend little pockets here and there. But like the coolest thing, like with what we have going on, like we had people who listen to our podcast who road tripped there together, who met through listening to our podcast, and they roomed together in hotels and
so
stuff.
Amazing.
And they've
That's so
built
cool.
friendships, and they do like book clubs that I didn't even know existed. Like, and it's just like seeing people come together as a family. And like, so like our event that we put on, we had to go, we went to Radiant Beer Co., which is about 2 miles from the convention center.
Look at the Grand Inquisitor in the back, by the way.
He had a Band-Aid on
I
his
love
stomach, which was so funny.
Yeah.
Mark Manna.
That's
is his
outstanding.
name.
But seeing these people like sort of come together, and they're developing their own friendships to the point where like we don't feel like we need to be in the conversation. They're just it's all a part of it. Means such a great deal, because this is what it's all about. Look at that little kid there, Charlie.
Oh, I
and
love Charlie.
there was a 3-year-old girl there dressed as Ahsoka with I think her 2 dads, and like and we had people there who were in their 70s, and it's just like you look at that picture, and it's like it doesn't matter what generation you are, where your background is, your walk of life, what region you're from, or whatever. Everyone just loves this thing, and that's really all that matters. And it's silly, but at the same time, it's very, very important. And as long as you don't take it too far in one way or the other, that's what means the most to me. And I wish I had more time to talk to people and hang out with people. There were nights where I got back and people were at the bar, and I'm like, my feet are freaking killing me. I'm so freaking tired, and like I had to like just go to bed. But I wish I had more downtime to just talk to people instead of just running around all the time.
For me, that Marriott bar was my saving grace, because that was kind of where everybody gravitated to at the end of Star Wars night, after Mush Eisley, all these other things that were going on. Like that was the place. Like I sat down with Chris Ryans and Claire and somebody else at a table on that back patio, and all of a sudden we're like, there's Star Wars Minute guys, there's Ken and Joseph, there's and people just started coming through. And so that helped deal with the fact that during the day, like you said, you're running out from one place to the next. I didn't go to half the panels I thought I was going to go to, because on my way there, like I ran into Scotty and Jerry, and they're like, hey, we're going to this thing. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go with you because I want to spend time. Right. I do want to bring up, because y'all are talking about meeting with folks, and this one is certainly important to who you guys are, but we have this picture, which is fantastic.
Yeah. So Jonas, we had him on the show once, that we had to do like a pre-record with him, and then we had been in touch, and he was going to try to make it to the Make Solo 2 Happen meetup, but he had a private signing, so he couldn't go. So he asked his people to have us come see him.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's outstanding.
So this so wasn't cool. A let's buy a photo op. He wanted to like meet us. And talk
he asked
to us.
us to come over. Yeah.
So he got back from his thing, and we walk over, and we gave him like the pins. And I'm like, this is for your baby Bakas and stuff, because like Alex and Molly had given him a shirt, a Make Solo 2 Happen shirt, when they interviewed him at Dragon Con on our behalf, and he had said, my son's first words were Make Solo 2 Happen. And it's just so it's ridiculous, because honestly, we made this T-shirt as a joke, because why would they make a sequel to something that didn't do that well? And it just took off. Like it just captured people, and he is so nice. It wasn't a situation where he was like, let's take the photo and get him out of here. He kept talking to us, and it got to the point
where he didn't want us to go. He kept talking.
Yeah. He had a line of people who started forming to get his next hour of photos and stuff, where we were like, we'll let you go to do your thing. He just kept like shaking our hands, putting his arm around us, talking to us. He's like, yeah, he's like, we got to come back, right? He's like, we got to do it, right? He's like, keep it going, keep doing it. You guys are the best and stuff. And we were like, dude, you're the freaking best, because who better? How could you replace Peter Mayhew, who's the most nicest, sweetest, gentle giant on earth? Rest in peace.
Yep.
They found him. Because this guy is so nice. He cares about the fans so much. He cares about Chewie so much. I think he actually made up and learned Shriwook. And he's just, he's amazing. It was so cool to meet him. And I love when a Star Wars actor not only loves being in Star Wars, but loves the fans and is so humble and genuine and nice. And I can't say enough good things about that guy. That's why I'm rooting so hard for him to come back, because he is amazing.
Yeah, you know how sometimes too, like, people will see, like, who's your Han Solo, and most people will be like, oh, it's Harrison Ford, like that's Han Solo to me, or whatever. I think like sometimes it can kind of switch. Like when you say Obi-Wan, for instance, like people think now Ewan McGregor, probably that's their Obi-Wan. Right. To me, I love Peter, but Jonas is Chewbacca, and in a weird way, like I can almost watch the old movies and feel like that was Jonas too, in a strange way. But like, to me, with him being in all of the sequel movies and Solo, it's like I just
and
feel
learning
like
directly from Peter too.
Yeah. I just feel like there's so much that he's given us, and a lot of people still kind of look at him as like the other person who's just kind of playing Chewbacca. And I'm like, no, man, that to me, he's Chewbacca. That's really him, and I'm really meeting the real guy in a way, to me,
Yeah, well, I mean, with all those, I mean, he's been on camera as Chewie probably almost as much as Peter, right? I mean, because
a little longer.
A little longer.
Yeah. So there you go.
So amazing. Pete, what about you? Because I know for you, this was your first celebration, and of course, a lot of it, and you and I talk all the time, so we were together most of the time.
Yep.
But I think for you, certainly there was a very special element in this, which was you were there with your 9-year-old son and your 75-year-old dad for your first Star Wars celebration experience.
It was, it was funny. It was both amazing and stressful in a way, because honestly, there were John, hearing you say that by the time you got back to the bar, you were over. Same thing here. I had like this master plan of, this is great. I'll be at celebration all day, and then my dad and my son will go to bed, and then I'll go back out and party. But I was like, no, I'm done. So I made it out once or twice, but it was really amazing. My favorite thing, I said this to my last guest on Around the Galaxy last week. My son likes to sometimes give me a hard time about the podcast. He's like, oh, you're doing your podcast, come play with me or whatever. And on the way home from celebration on the plane, he said, Dad, I'm sorry I always give you a hard time about your podcast. Star Wars is awesome. And I was like, okay. So but he had such a great time. And also, yeah, there he is handing out stickers in the middle of the...
We put him to work handing out swag in the middle of the convention.
I don't know how many he handed out, but once he started going, he loved it. He sounded like Oprah. He's literally stopping people saying, you get a sticker, and you get a sticker, and you get a sticker. That's cool. And that's with the Tatooine Sons boys. That was very cool to meet them as well, because that's the next generation right there, right? You got the 9-year-old and those guys are heading off to college and whatnot. But it was really wild to do it with my dad, who introduced me to Star Wars and introduced me to my love of all this stuff, all this genre stuff. So to do it with him, and to have him with his grandson making memories together, was probably the best way to do it. Now, that said, hearing Lacey's point, and a question I want to throw back to Lacey is, since you've done so many celebrations, was doing celebration as a podcaster different? Obviously it was different because you had all these places to go, but how would you compare the experiences? Was it almost like two completely different things?
So I've had 3 separate experiences. I've worked for it,
Okay.
I've gone as a fan, and then I've gone as part of the podcast. So 2015 and 2016, I worked for Celebration. So that was like a whole different experience for me, because I was working the whole time. I didn't really see that much. It was very much like I have to go from place to place to place. I was doing social media for them. So that's what I was doing all weekend. 2017 was the first year that I went as a fan in Orlando. And that was very interesting, because it was like, I didn't have anything to do. I was just like there.
You're just there.
Yeah, which was actually really nice to not have anything to do. But then even then, like my friend still worked for Reed Pop, so they asked me to help out. So like I worked the cosplay contest that year, even though I didn't work there. But then, 2019 was the first year I went as a podcast with these guys, and we were on the podcast stage and everything. And it was a very interesting experience because I'd never been on a panel before. And now I've been on a couple. I was on the Ray panel this past year. It's a whole different experience, to talk to people that you talk to all the time and have them come up and say, I'm so-and-so. You're like, oh my God, you're the person that I constantly talk to all the time.
Yep.
I had no idea. Or, someone coming up and saying like, hey, you don't know me, but I listen to you twice a week and like you get me through the week is such a meaningful thing because I've said this to these guys before on our show, but I found my family or like my community through Star Wars through this podcast. My experience as a Star Wars fan and as a person has changed me and my life by doing this podcast and being a part of what we've created. I don't know who I would be if I wasn't a part of it. And I don't know where my life would be at this point. They've just always been so supportive and loving and kind, and everyone, despite the craziness that people see online, that is not the majority. The majority of people
100%.
are very kind and wonderful and just love this thing as much as you. They're just quiet and they have lives and they want to like, they chime in here and there, but mostly a lot of the people that engage with our content or anybody else, they're lurkers. They're just there to watch your stuff and then they go about their day and they're not there to engage in the craziness and the mean spirited stuff. So Celebration is interesting because you meet those people and they're all in one place and it's this kind of like hug of a weekend with Star Wars fans. But yeah, I mean, it's up to anybody if they want to be a podcaster or not, if they want to experience that. But my suggestion is don't overdo it. I feel like we got so much accomplished on this trip. But again, like John said, like more downtime just to experience would have probably been a little bit better.
I didn't go to the pool once.
We didn't go to the pool. Yeah.
I didn't even go. You were talking about that patio outside of.
We didn't go on the patio.
Yeah. Well, and it was one of those things that I happened upon. I guess it was the Star Wars night because I didn't have a ticket to go to Disney for Star Wars night. And so I was like, who else isn't doing that? And it seemed like initially that was a smaller number, but then it was like Chris and Dan from Broaxium. And, no, actually they were there, but it was, Scotty and Jerry didn't go, or Jerry went, but Scotty didn't. So I was with Scotty and his fiance. And then Pete ended up deciding, kind of at the last minute, because he had spent all of Friday at Disney with his son and his dad. Yeah. And he was like, other than fireworks, I've already done all this today.
Unlike James, I couldn't spend 17 hours there.
Exactly. So he sold his ticket. So he came. So that kind of became our meeting place. And again, I put in the show notes, and it's funny because I deleted it halfway through the show. I put in what was your favorite part other than meeting all the people? Because that's the
meeting
easy answer.
Brian was amazing, by the way.
But that
Brian
actually
Ward
is the answer. And so like that night, Jason Fry sat down with us for 2 hours at the table behind the Marriott bar. And we got to talk about, writing the Last Jedi novelization and doing all these other things. And then, for me, the first Star Wars podcast I ever listened to probably 8 years ago was Star Wars Minute. And Pete and Alex come walking out from Star Wars Minute. I'm like, holy crap, there's those guys. Like, I know them. I don't know them, but I know them, and then, Ash shows up after hosting the panel on Saturday when everybody's out there Saturday night, and it was her boyfriend's birthday. And, again, it just became this big family reunion that I didn't know I needed. And I think to your point, Lacey, about the people that just consume stuff, hang out. Yeah, there's Ash. She was so cool to hang out. She bought shots for like 20 people. But one of the things that I discovered, and we talked about this before going out there, is you interact with these people on a daily basis on Twitter, on social media. They message you about your shows and all that kind of stuff. There wasn't a single person that I met in real life that wasn't exactly who I expected them to be or better. Yep. Everybody delivered. Every person I met was kind, wonderful. Scotty was as weird as you expect him to be. Jerry's the hobbit that you think he's going to be. Alden is Alden. Everybody. And I would say that to his face because he's my boy. But like being able to finally spend time with, as my wife has dubbed them and why we have a shirt, Weird Space Friends, like it was the family reunion I didn't know I needed after, especially the last 2 years of pandemic and isolation and all the places we've been. It really was, and I'm ignoring Bill Sheehy in the chat right now. But it was amazing. Like it really was just, it was the time I wanted to hang out. If I had never set foot in the convention center, I would have still had one of the best trips of my life because I got to be with my people. Luckily, I also got to go see Harrison Ford and John Williams, and I got to see, that Mando Plus panel, and there's so much there that we could go on for way, way too long about that, but I don't want to take up anybody's time too much. So as we start to land this hovercraft, what are your closing thoughts? I know y'all said you're planning to go to London at this point, so that's exciting. Any other closing thoughts from your celebration experience this year?
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, James.
Oh, go ahead, me. Oh, goodness. I don't know, man. Like it's weird to say because I have a history of like being in the band and stuff, and like I connect. I recognize that type of like interaction with fans, and the same way that we're describing Warped Tour, or I'm sorry, the celebration. I'm like clicking back to Warped Tour, where it's like all these different bands, and you can hang out with them, and there's different people showing up randomly and stuff, and I'm just like having all these flashbacks, and I often think about that life, and I'm like, man, I wish I could go back to that. That was so much fun. And now at this point in my life where the Resistance broadcast is like my new band, going to Celebration is that opportunity to connect with those fans in person and see them there, talk with them, have that discussion. They can, talk back, and we can have that conversation. And then it also just extends to the other creators. It's so weird because at the end of the day, like, yeah, I'm a creator and I'm like equal with so-and-so, but also I'm a fan of so-and-so. I watch so-and-so's show on a regular basis because at the level we're doing it, like I don't know, like there's no other Star Wars content out there that is at like such a high level that we're not also doing the same thing, like that those people are aware of us and we're aware of them. Yep. And we're all kind of like shifting around a little bit. So I just think like Celebration to me is this like kind of nostalgic trick for myself, like back to a different time in my life. And it's like clashing the two together. And it just means so much to me and as an individual. But when I'm out there and I'm talking to everybody else, including John and Lacey and you guys, and I just think everybody has such a different experience, but it's always good. I can't even imagine someone coming out of that event and being like, I thought it was going to be so awesome, and it just stunk the whole time. Like I was just so mad that I didn't get into panels. I spent all this money and it wasn't even worth it. Like it's just so hard to believe. So I feel like I want to like recommend it to other people. It is expensive to go, and it does feel like it's a little bit of a privilege when you're there. But I think that everybody that does go, probably similar to the Star Cruiser, is like, yes, time of my life. I will always remember it, and it's just money. It was worth it, kind of thing.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I don't know. Closing thoughts about Celebration. I'm not sure. I mean, there is certainly. I'm not going to, put anybody on the spot, but there were people that I had heard are like not nice people or bad people, and then I met them there, and they might have been the friendliest, nicest people I met the whole week. Yep. And it's it's foolish of me to at 39 years old to partially believe hearsay about people I've never had a conversation with. Sure. And then I actually have my experience with that person. I'm like, wow, that person was nicer than most of the people I met this week. So it's a lot of that. It's a lot of also understanding, because some people get so bogged down in the social media thing, and people are always talking about Star Wars Twitter, and I couldn't give an S about Star Wars Twitter. Like, it's about the real human, and I mean that in the sense where I'm on there and I like interacting, and we meet people that we wouldn't be able to meet otherwise. But if you get to actually meet people face to face, whether it's Star Wars Celebration or just a Star Wars fan you meet at a diner, like that's a real experience that you're having with somebody, and I think that's irreplaceable. So we talk about the John Williams, like Nick, you said, like, oh yeah, and I saw John Williams and Harrison Ford, and you mean it, because it really is all the other stuff that means the most. And it's the human
Yeah.
experience, especially post COVID. We're still in it, of course, but
Mhm.
this celebration meant so much to so many people for so many reasons. One being, it's been 3 years, and
Right.
it's been canceled celebrations, and people had a chance to actually go back and remember what it's like to be with people and experience this stuff. And you could be face to face with somebody who hates your favorite Star Wars movie, but when you are face to face with somebody, you're a human being and you're kinder to people.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think
and
that stuff
even
is
with
so
those-
important, man.
Even with those 3 years, like you said, the distance in that first panel on Thursday, the opening video package they rolled was about, we're so glad we get to be back together. I cried like a baby at that.
Yeah, man.
All the footage
Yeah.
from old celebrations and all of the stars commenting on the video about how much the community of Star Wars fans means to them. I'm sitting there going, this is why I came. I came for this. And this is literally the first
Yeah.
half hour that I'm here.
Right. And they show clips of Carrie Fisher, and you're just like,
Yes,
man,
every bit of it.
'cause
Just
she only would have
toast.
been 65 today. We forget that, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Jerry was one of the first people we saw that night at the Hilton bar. And it's just
Absolutely.
good. It's good seeing people because to be completely honest, like Pete, we had issues that we developed between each other. That really stemmed from a lot of just miscommunication, misunderstanding, and tension, and like I'm not giving into that person, and we developed this disdain for each other, and we peel back the curtain here, whatever, we're live, but we both reached out without knowing that we both reached out before celebration to say let's cut this crap and let's remember what's important here. There's a war in Ukraine, there's all this stuff going on in the world. It's we're lucky to be on this blue marble and live here in this livable planet, but there's a lot of seriousness out there. We all have bills to pay. We all have real jobs, real lives. This stuff really does not matter. And the fact that we're here now talking about it is a testament to what it means to just understand what's really important. So I think that stuff goes a long way, and I'm glad that all of this has transpired the way it has, and that's why I am going to London. It's going to be a big commitment. It's a big commitment for my wife to let me go. I have 2 kids, and the money, all of this stuff. But the I don't know that I would go to Europe if it wasn't for what this podcast has let me do, and what Star Wars News Net lets me do, and just this community. I'm not saying it's a drug, but it means a great deal to experience these celebrations. So if people are, like James said, if people are able to do it, or they have to scrap to make it happen, do it, because you don't want to regret it one day, and you don't know what's going to happen in life. So you got to make these things work if you can, because I really recommend the importance of that human experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, building off what John said, I think, over the past 2-3 years since COVID, really, to be completely honest, John and I lost our jobs. It was a really tough few years for
I
us.
did too.
And it was Star Wars, and this community was the only thing that was basically holding me together at some points. Now, I say that having had a kid in the past 6 months, but before that, it was really, really tough. There were days that I was like, what is the point? What are we doing here? So building off of what John said about not holding on to things, that's another reason why we're all here as well, Pete. Not holding on to negativity or bad energy, or I don't want to be that person to hold on to that. So if anybody ever gets into an argument with someone on Twitter or doesn't like something someone said, I can't stress enough, just reach out to that person and say hey, what's going on here? Because it's not worth the dunking. It's not worth the quote tweet. It's not worth the screenshot or subtweet. Just have the conversation. We're all adults. Just talk about it, because at the end of the day, and this goes back to my experience of working in social media for almost over a decade, you don't know what that other person is going through.
100%.
And that's oftentimes when I've had to deal with really bad people in customer service. When I worked for New York Comic Con, I had someone tell me they were going to hunt me down and kill my family.
Oh my God.
People are crazy. That being said, I don't know what that person was going through. Is their mom sick with cancer? Did they just lose their house? What is going on there that they have this kind of raw, crazy energy? Now, I understand that sometimes people are just mean, and that is a thing, but oftentimes it does come from something else. So I just ask that people just use a little bit of understanding of hey, maybe this isn't about me. They're just channeling it into what's going on. that being said, I harp back to what I said earlier, which is just like, this community means so much to me. And before these guys went to Celebration, I'd always like kind of hype it up, being like, it's the best weekend ever. I tell you guys, it's like the Super Bowl. It's amazing. There's nothing you're gonna love it. And they'd be like, okay, cool. And then they went and they were like, you were right. It's just such a good feeling event. It's great to see people that you talk to all the time. I will honestly tell you that I have more online friends than real friends, like real
Sure.
friends, as in like people that I interact with on a daily basis. And I honestly wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
I've met some amazing people, including these two guys. I didn't know John lived 20 minutes from me. It just happened.
Wild. Yeah.
And I strongly suggest, if you're a Star Wars fan, to make the commitment and go at least once. You won't regret it. And I always say this too, like, pick one thing a day that you want to do, and then the rest of the time just explore, because otherwise you're going to end up like me, where you're running around the convention center. But it's just, Star Wars has made me who I am from the moment that I watched it when I was 6 or 7 to now. It's like in my blood, and this community has just made me such a better person than I was 4 years ago. And really, really helped me grow into who I am today. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And I thank you for having us on.
It's amazing.
Everything about all of that. Thank you for sharing that. That really is a testament to exactly what you said, the community. I made the joke about the show notes and I said, what's your favorite part? Not the people, but the real answer, it truly is the people. That was a fun thing for me to do. And like you guys, I lost my job 2 weeks before the pandemic started, and I spent the entire first year of the pandemic without a job. And so it was literally this community, and taking my podcast, which started in 2017 and was kind of sporadic, and picked up steam at that point because I was home and I had time, and it was a way to connect. And I met Pete and all these other people. And we joke all the time, the old Force Connect shows on Fridays. That was the bar that none of us could go to because everybody was stuck at home on a Friday night.
And it was so isolating. Yeah.
Oh, but truly it is about the community. And I love the thoughts that you have all shared about what it means. And it really is. If you have the experience, if you have the chance to go, it's worth every drop, every penny you spend, every minute, every little bit of sleep you don't get.
Don't take our advice for it. Take Obi-Wan Kenobi's advice. He says in the commercial, you've seen it, when you look back, you're going to miss the things you didn't buy or the places you didn't go, right?
That's right. Absolutely. It's been amazing. I can't thank y'all enough for doing this tonight. This has been so much fun.
Of course.
Before we get out of
nice
here,
to finally chat with you, Nick. I feel like we've
doubt.
like Obi-Wan and Vader on the Death Star. We kept missing each other.
That's right. Different levels, taking the turbo lift. Well, before we get out of here, what do you guys have coming up next? What do you want to plug? I know next week, of course, you'll have another Obi-Wan show. What else y'all have going on?
Yeah. So we're affiliated with StarWarsNewsNet.com. It's a fan-run site for Star Wars news, book reviews, editorial stuff like that. We're the Resistance Broadcast. We do 2 episodes a week, typically Mondays and Thursdays. But if there's a streaming show on, we'll have our normal Monday show. But assuming it's still Wednesdays, we go live on Wednesdays, and then that hits our podcast feeds thereafter. The channel's youtube.com/Star Wars Newsnet videos, and we're available on all podcast apps. We have a Patreon also. And what else am I missing? Yeah, it pretty much covers most of it, right?
Yeah. Where are you, John?
Oh, if you'd like to. Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Johnny Hoey, and I'm the lead editor and senior writer for Star Wars Newsnet.
Yeah, like John said, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Resistance Broadcast. If you want to join our community, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran.
And you can find me. I just changed my name so that you can see.
Oh, I should change mine. Is it too late? It's probably too late.
No, I think you can. I just did it, so it's not too late. But mine is weird. I'm on Twitter and Instagram both at Myra Trunks, MIRAHTRUNKS. It's a Dragon Ball thing, so I wish it was the Star Wars thing, but I was doing a Dragon Ball podcast before this, so I was like, hey, my name works out. It's great. And now all of a sudden, this is where we're at. So
I was
That's
tempted
awesome.
to put Babu Frick. I'm not gonna lie.
We would have allowed it. It would have been fine. Pete, where are you and what do we have going on? You can do all of our stuff.
I can do all of our stuff. Well, we have Disturbances in the Force on Saturday mornings, little 5-minute news, which we usually record live on these Friday nights when we do streaming Star Wars. The audio from the streaming Star Wars show that we do live on Friday nights ends up in the podcast stream on Mondays. And on Thursdays, you either get Around the Galaxy or you get Podcast of the Wills. And this week, you're getting Podcast of the Wills. Who do you have this week, Nick?
This week we are in the 4th chapter of our Phantom Menace canon study, and it is the lovely Claire Stribling from the Imperial Senate podcast. Everybody loves Claire. And peek behind the curtain, because we've done that a couple times tonight. I recorded this episode with Claire the week before Celebration and had the worst technological problems I've ever had recording a podcast. So bad that I had to call her and beg her and ask her to re-record. So we're re-recording on Monday night. And it'll be in the feed on Thursday. But it's a great conversation, and she has some great things to say, especially about Shmi and Anakin and that part of Phantom Menace. So I'm excited for everybody to check that out.
That's awesome. And hey, I would be remiss. I want to just reference what John and Lacey mentioned. For those of you who know us, and if you're not subscribed here, please do. And if you're not subscribed over at TRB, please go do that because they're amazing. If you know us and you know our Twitter lives, we did have some issues, and I can't say enough great things about John, Lacey, and James in regard to the conversation we had before, a couple weeks before Celebration. We all kind of just put it out there, and we were all adults, as they said, and it's really amazing. I'm so much happier as a result, and I think I don't want to overstate it, but I think if you have a voice in social media or via podcast or YouTube in the Star Wars community, you have an obligation to be a good person about it. I think there's too much garbage out there. You see me fighting it all the time, and when I became the garbage, it needed to be addressed, and I'm so glad we had the conversation. And just TRB was one of the first shows I listened to, and they're great people, and I can say that not just because they're on the show, but because I've had the great opportunity to talk to them a number of times. So great work, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been great for us. I think a number of people who joined us had a great time, and look forward to speaking to you guys all again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great.
My cuppeth is empty, so we did a good job.
Your Love is Blind wine glass.
Mine too.
My mega pint is empty. Yeah, so
I gotta send him a screenshot. He has no idea what I'm talking about.
I don't. Awesome. Yeah, what am I gonna watch that?
You guys know what I'm talking about? Love is Blind, the show on Netflix.
Nope.
I've heard of it. I don't know what you're talking about.
They all
But I've
have
heard
those gold goblet wine glasses that it became like a thing, and you just rolled up with one.
I thought it was more Game of Thronesy, but I guess it's Love is Blind. But anyway, my love for what happened tonight
it's clearly not
blind.
the chalice from the Last Crusade. That much we know for
It
sure.
is not. No,
You have chose poorly.
See, people in the chat know what I'm talking about. Sean knows what's up.
Well,
thank you guys
there you
though. We really appreciate
Awesome.
having us on. This was a great time. So good chats. I got a smile on my face,
Awesome.
so that's always a good thing after talking about Star Wars and what we've been talking about for the last 90 minutes. So appreciate it.
Awesome. Well,
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Nick, may the Force be with you.
Always.